We back with another reflection on the Daily Vedantic, where we discuss the timeless philosophy of Advaita Vedanta. And today we're going to discuss the method and the message. There are many worldviews that touch on the oneness of this universe. The one verse. There are many lineages within the great traditions. You have Christian mysticism, Jewish Kabbalism, you have Sufism. Within Islam, you've got Advaita Vedanta. In the East, Buddhism, Dzogchen Buddhism specifically, Tibetan Buddhism. You have these different lineages that point to this oneness. Advaita means not two. And I've said this before, the reason that this philosophy and many like it will be called non-dual is because these preceptors, these sages, they were so precise in their language. So precise. Like if you get a word wrong in quoting any of these texts to a master, they will quickly correct you if you say in instead of. I know I once said renunciation through action and got corrected. Renunciation in action. And that deserves its own episode of the distinction between the two. And for 2 days I thought that's basically saying the same thing. But these sages, they'll use something like non-dual instead of oneness because oneness is 95% there, but it still has this subtle hint that there is a border around it. If there is one anything, there is a subtle implication that there is a border around it versus not two. Non-dual, meaning not two. If something is not two, then it goes from 95% articulation to 100% articulation. You don't hear not two and imagine a border around it. But you will find the words one or oneness within translations of the original Sanskrit within this philosophy, for sure. And you will find that, like I said, in nearly every major world tradition. A lineage that reveres the oneness of all existence. A oneness in the midst of perceived plurality. A non-duality in a sea of perceived duality. In the midst of separate names and forms, there is a oneness, a non-duality of existence. That is our natural state, is realizing that non-duality in the midst of these names and forms. The nama, rupa, as we touched on in the last episode, the superimposition of separateness in the midst of oneness. So the message itself comes up, as Aldous Huxley called it, the perennial philosophy. The message itself comes up again and again. What is unique to Advaita Vedanta is that it isn't just the message, it is also the method. It isn't just delivering a radical message of oneness in the midst of perceived plurality. It is also built on the method of realizing it. Not just hearing the message, but experiencing what is said in that message. There are different sages throughout history, even in this lineage, that have the message. But our teacher will often say they had the message, but not the method. Socrates sounds like he might have had the message. Might have very well been a realized soul, but not necessarily the method. A systematic, and when I say method, I mean a systematic approach for others to realize the same truths. Not just saying it, not just being called a fool in their time and then 1,000 years later being seen as a lighthouse, but delivering not just the message, but the method for us to experience it ourselves. There is almost nothing worse than the delivery of the message, a knowing, but then no way of communicating how to experience it ourselves. The definition, the distinction of a guru in this philosophy, which means dispeller of darkness, is that they ought to be realized. A real classical definition of a guru is a realized individual and established in the wisdom, which means you could have someone that is fully realized, that got the message. They might say some profound things, but they don't have the method to impart their experience, to walk people into their experience in a methodical, systematic way. This book that I'm always talking about on this podcast, Vedanta Treatise, this is unique in that it is not just a collection of quotes or parables or reframings of our experience here as the message. But this book, with its 3 parts, with its articulation to read, feel free to read the whole thing in 3 or 4 hours, but then its articulation to read it piece by piece after that, 2 to 3 pages at a time, spending 20% of the time reading and 80% of the time reflecting on what has been read. All between these 2 covers, the message and the method, and there is nothing woo about it. There is nothing that requires leaps of faith. It is so logically constructed. That's the benefit of a book being written over the course of 23 years. There are bestsellers that are written in 9 days. I think Matthew McConaughey wrote his book, Green Lights. I remember him saying that on some episode. He wrote it in 9 days. He got like an RV or a cabin somewhere and wrote it in 9 days. This is not that. This is 23 years, 14 revisions, and this was written by someone, a master of both Sanskrit and of Advaita Vedanta in their late 40s, written over 23 years after they were already a master for, at that point, a decade and a half. That is what is between these 2 covers, is the message and the method. The daily practices that I always touch on are question everything, don't take anything for granted, and study, reflect daily. This, and that is the method at its highest level, to question everything, don't take anything for granted, and study, reflect daily. And this is the text you could study and reflect daily. But I also wanted to bring it up because I'm going to read some of the things that is quite literally between the 2 covers. The quotes that are in one of my daughters marked with a pin on one of these pages, but you can see these quotes on the inside binding of this book. I'm going to read some of these quotes to give you a sense of what else is between these covers. Because these quotes, I remember they were the first thing that I read when I first discovered this book. Opened it up and saw these quotes and thought, I've got to read that book. So I'm going to read a few of them for you. These are right inside the inside binding, and some quotes are from Swami, our teacher, our 98-year-old teacher. Some are from, you've got Emerson and Shakespeare. It is not the world that distresses you, but how you relate to it. The soul of religion has been slain, and people are hugging on to its carcass. I'm going to read all of these for you. There's like 20 of them. The law of life is that the mind should be at rest while the body engages in action. The law of life is that the mind should be at rest while the body engages in action. Your home should be the center, not the boundary of your affection. The role of Vedanta is to free you from infatuation to celebrities and educate you on the eternities. Modern civilized ones without self-development are but intelligent savages living in spiritual slums. Inclusive love, not exclusive attachment, is the unfoldment of heaven. So these are just kind of a smattering of quotes that are within the book itself, but also as kind of teasers in the inside binding. You get what you deserve, not what you desire. Each one of these is just a knowledge bomb that could stick with you for weeks and make subtle or profound shifts in how we approach the world. Do not lose the treasure of yourself for the pleasure of the senses. Transform your unilateral passion into universal adoration. A person thinking rationally today is a needle in a haystack. You are more concerned about your act of kindness than the thought of kindness. Give your personality a lift. You lift the whole world. I'll leave you with a few more. From Shakespeare, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. A stone that is fit for the wall is not left in the way. Richard Trench. The most sensible man is my tailor, for he is the only one who takes fresh measurements every time I go to him. George Bernard Shaw. Faith is a bird that feels the light and sings while the dawn is still dark. Rabindranath Tagore. So many gods, so many creeds, so many paths that wind and wind, while just the art of being kind is all the sad world needs. Ella Wilcox. It is difficult to find happiness within oneself, but it is impossible to find it anywhere else. Arthur Schopenhauer. There's another Schopenhauer quote here of, in the whole world, there is no study so beneficial and so elevating as that of Vedanta. Arthur Schopenhauer. Every man is a divinity in disguise, a god playing the fool. Ralph Waldo Emerson. The trouble with most folks is not so much their ignorance as their knowing so many things which ain't so. Josh Billings. And the last one. All grumbling is tantamount to, oh, why is a lily not an oak? All grumbling is tantamount to, oh, why is a lily not an oak? Those are the teasers that pulled me into reading the first 2 or 3 pages of that book. I think it communicated to me that this was going to be knowledge that was written for a world that I grew up in. It's not going to be foreign to me. If there are quotes of Emerson and Shakespeare and Schopenhauer, it was going to be written from a lens that was exposed to similar things as myself. Had no idea it was going to be as profound of a read and point in my life as it became a decade ago. And still is each time that I'm rereading it right now for the umpteenth time. But it is. But one thing I want to leave you with this reflection, more than anything else I've said in this episode up to this point, is to reiterate that there is a message and then there is a method to realizing that message. Don't settle for the message alone. Strive, pursue, not just the message, but the method, the systematic approach that something like this philosophy has honed in on over the last 5,000 plus years to not just talk about the truth, but to help each of us realize the truth. That is one of the most distinguishing aspects of this philosophy over any other that I've come across. That is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. Don't settle for the message. Pursue the method to experience it. We'll see you next time.